Hey guys, welcome to the Aquis YouTube channel. This detailed video is on a very important regulation which can affect you if you export one of these 7 items. This episode is on the EUDR. We have Vikas, our founder, who will be breaking it down, explaining how you, as a brand who's exporting to the Europe market, can ensure that your brand, your company, your business is protected and compliant. Let's do a deep dive into the EUDR. So, hey Vikas, thanks for joining in.
Hi Nikhil, how are you?
So, this is something which is going to affect a lot of brands. To give you some perspective, India's coffee export to EU accounts for 50% of total coffee exports which India does.
I think it's more than that.
And probably this is data from a couple of years back and worth over $600 million. India is the world's fifth largest rubber exporter, and EU receives approximately 25% of its natural rubber from us. That's over $800 million annually. Finally, India is a major exporter of finished leather products, with EU accounting for 30 to 40% of its export, worth roughly $1.5 billion annually. I'm giving you some of these numbers, and I specifically chose these three major export products because these are the ones which will deeply be affected by the EUDR. So, what is this EUDR and how is it going to impact our trade? Vikas, can you just take us through what is EUDR?
So, if you look at world over, Europe is one union. It's not a country. So it's one union, one continent where they're very conscious about the environment and everything happening around that. So, given that, what they've done is they've made a regulation, which is EUDR. It basically means European Union Deforestation Regulation. It basically mandates that any product not any product, there are 7 to 8 products which they've classified. And I'm assuming it may probably get expanded to more products. So any of these products which are imported into Europe need to come from an area which is not prone to deforestation. So any such commodity like coffee, leather, rubber, etc., which gets imported into Europe, it has to be proven that these are basically being grown and sourced from regions where basically deforestation is not happening.
Okay.
This is basically to protect the environment, to ensure that you're conscious about that, and to put onus on the growers to not, cut down trees,
Destroy the environment, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To basically, grow these commodities, etc. The impact of this obviously is that the Indian exporters now will have to basically ensure that they comply with this. It basically puts more pressure on them now. They need to satisfy more regulations. They need to ensure that they're able to prove to the importer that this is coming from an area which is not deforested, which obviously also going to affect some of the exports that happens. Is going to put a little bit more pressure on the export as well from
So
India.
if it's not deforested, basically they are saying that it has to be a cultivated land. Is that what is my understanding correct?
The thing is, I think they put basically they've defined area which is before 2020.
Okay.
That area, after 2020, we need to ensure that the area had the same forest cover which it had around that time.
Okay.
So that's what we need to prove. So which basically means yes. So that area should have not been deforested now to enable this cultivation. So it's ideally should already have been a land which is used for cultivation.
Okay.
Or it should be grown in areas where there is enough forest covers. Like for example, coffee anyways needs good forest cover to grow. So that could be the reason. The idea is that you should not chop down the trees, erode the forest, reduce the number of trees, etc. that are currently that we have among the forest cover that we have in India.
Okay.
Or for that matter, any country. This is not just specific to India. Any country which is basically exporting to Europe needs to comply with that.
So my conspiracy brain is beeping here. But basically, have they done this to make it harder for exporters to sell in the EU? You think it's a competition prevention thing, or is it actually deforestation?
No, I don't think so, because if you look at it, it's meant to happen for all countries, right?
Okay.
Plus, I'm sure within EU as well, they're very conscious about the environment, right? Plus, Europe is dependent on other countries for a lot of their needs, right? So, I mean, it's not that these crops or these commodities are being locally grown.
Okay.
So a lot of these are actually procured from outside. So I don't think it's meant to do that.
Okay.
It's basically meant to send a message that, okay, we are not going to procure any products which are grown from deforested area. There's a lot of talk about climate change, etc. I think that's where it's coming from, to basically ensure that there is enough happening to prevent climate change, which is basically what is very common across all the events, conferences that you see globally, the political conferences. There are a lot of talk about climate change. And I think that's a message that is being sent out for that.
So let's talk about, I'm an exporter, right?
Yes.
I say I was selling to EU and now this has come in. So how do I start with, how do I ensure that I'm compliant with this? Typically, what's the even first step which I take?
So the first step is for you to basically get satellite data about your area to show that this is what it was at the time of, there's a cutoff date. I think it's March 2020 or 2020 is the cutoff date. So to show that this is what the forest cover was that time, and also develop a polygon for yourself. So let's say if you have a farm or a farmland or wherever you're growing your commodity, you need to be able to get a polygon for your area to show that this is where my region is, where I grow, where my farm is, etc. Right? And once you got a polygon, once you got your SAT data, what you then need to do is whenever you're exporting something, the importer would then ask you for these polygons, right? So when they get access to these polygons, they then share it with the European regulation.
What is polygon? I'm not understanding.
Okay, great. So polygon, I mean, I'm sure if you studied basic geometry, polygon is nothing but it's a closed shape.
It's a closed shape.
Right. So when you have farmland, the points, the coordinates which cover your farmland at the boundary basically think of it as a perimeter of your farmland.
Right.
The boundary is which can be depicted on a map. Mm-hmm. Is a polygon, right?
Okay.
So if I'm able to basically capture all the points on my boundary,
okay,
and show that this is where my boundary lies for my farm, and within my boundary there is not much deforestation that is happening, etc. And then when I'm able to import this polygon into, let's say tool like Google Earth, I'll be able to visualize where your farm is and be able to understand and compare the forest cover before and after. So that is what a polygon is.
So you're mentioning this from a farmer's perspective. That's the start of the supply chain. My assumption is a typical trader is a typical exporter is a trader, or
Correct.
He's buying from multiple farms and he's exporting. So how will he build out a process like this?
He has to basically ensure that wherever he procures it from, they are following this process.
Okay.
The idea is for him to facilitate getting this polygon. There are also other things which we need to, or they need to build, right?
Okay, such as
traceability systems, right? For example, when a product...
What is a traceability system?
Correct. So when a product is, let's say, picked up from plants, that's the first point of this supply chain, right? The supply chain of, let's take coffee as an example, right? When you look at coffee is basically grown in regions here in Karnataka. We have Coorg, Chikmagalur, and BR Hills, some of the areas where coffee is grown. And Karnataka is one of the major sources of coffee within India. So now when the farmer picks up the coffee beans from the plant, that's the first point of the supply chain. So that moment is where we capture where the coffee was procured from, right? And now when the coffee moves to the next step, right?
You capture, how it is captured?
So it could be, okay. So there's a process called as, what we call it internally at Aquis is digitization, right? So basically you create a digital twin of a physical product.
Okay.
So you have a physical product, which is your coffee packed in a gunny bag. So as soon as the coffee is procured, it's get packed in a gunny bag. That's your physical product. Now you give it a digital identity by, placing some kind of a label with a 2D code, etc., something like that. You place that code, and now you basically marry this code to the physical product. So now this digital label becomes a twin of the physical product.
Okay.
And that is what is digitization. Now, when that happens, you also capture data about the physical product also on the...
So where it was picked.
Exactly. Where it was picked. What is the quality parameters of, of that particular coffee. Things like your grade, etc. also could be captured at that moment. And your outturn, your moisture content, all of these could be captured. And then when this bag now moves, so when I say capture, I also capture the geographic location, verifying that it's picked up from this region only. Now, when this bag moves to the next step, right? It could move to, let's say, a warehouse, or could move to a trader, or anywhere like that. we also need to then map this. So now when this coffee bag from farmer A has moved to a particular trader, the trader is now able to capture that as well. Similarly, how the farmer
and verify it probably.
and verify it, and also add his additional details that he would have. Also, we could capture his location as well if needed. So now I've built a chain, a network. Now, starting from the farmer, it's gone to the next step, and I'm able to understand that this particular farmer has sold to this particular trader. Now, when this trader sends it, and he can basically attach just a
The
digital
same
label,
digital
or
label.
it could basically have another label which now has the new information plus the old information as well. So the new information plus old information is available on the new label. And then now when the new label goes in the hands of anybody sitting in Europe, they can verify it, get to know where it was picked up from. They get the complete data. So right now, it's still, Europe is not mandated, even though they mentioned traceability has to be there. They've not yet defined how the traceability has to work. But this is how I believe the traceability is what they would be expecting it to.
Eventually also.
Actually, yeah, absolutely. But also now the demand is just to send the polygon.
Okay.
So as soon as the material reaches, let's say Europe, the importer who's imported the material from here would then be sent the polygon from the farmer to the trader to the importer, and then he would then
verify it.
Get it.
This is as it stands today.
As it stands today, but eventually it's going to be a traceability system.
Yeah, guys, it's going to be like how Euro 5, Euro 6 norms came for automotive. It will be something similar. They'll keep increasing the demands every year.
Absolutely. And I think they've already defined most of the things, like traceability has to be there. They'll want each and every bag that gets sold to carry some kind of traceability so that they are able to verify where it's coming from, who are the players involved. They obviously may add more parameters like sustainability within the network as well, ensuring that all the players are using sustainable practices. Also, they may want to look at other practices that are being followed to ensure that there's, everything complies with the law.
So you do this always through technology, and understand that we'll talk about it later. But say a normal exporter is there. He doesn't have a technology integrated. How would that person go about following this?
So right now, it is mandated, right? You cannot escape it, right?
Yeah.
So you have to do it. So right now, some of the traders, what they're doing is they are building these polygons. They're actually working with tech companies like ours and ensuring that they're able to comply. So, I mean, there's no way to escape this. So you have
There's no alternative.
There's no alternative. So
it's like how every engine had to go into fuel injection.
Correct. So absolutely, there's no alternative, and you have to adapt and adopt this technology. So I'm not saying technology. You have to adapt to the you have to comply with the regulation.
Or forget about that business.
Absolutely. Or you don't export to Europe. That's about it. I mean, then maybe you look for alternate markets. Like you have other alternate markets, and then you look for alternate markets and see if you can sell there. A lot of traders are also focusing inward now. They're also trying to see how they can grow coffee consumption within India.
Right.
That's something which is also happening. But still,
EU में बेचना है तो ये करना पड़ेगा.
Absolutely, because if you look at the numbers, 60 to 70% of coffee grown in India is exported. India is still not a coffee consuming country, right? It's a tea consuming country. Only in South India we see coffee being consumed. It is growing, but it's going to be a steady growth. So until then, where we are able to consume the coffee that is grown here, I think we'll have to depend on Europe.
True. So let's talk about the next part, which is, in your opinion, right? How many you interact with a lot of these businesses, a lot of these exporters. What percentage of these exporters you have seen who are actually actively looking to adopt these measures and continue exporting to EU?
No, so what we have seen is the good thing is I think the government is got active in this regard as well. What they're also doing is they're facilitating to ensure that most of these exporters are able to comply, right? So the government is also working with a lot of companies to ensure that they are able to use systems and technology. Government is also working on building their own systems and technology to ensure that smaller traders are able to adapt it and use it, right? So having said that, all traders, at least within those commodities which are highly exported, are well aware. They are looking to use systems.
Everyone wants euros, guys.
True. No, I mean, if a commodity is heavily export oriented, then I think they need to obviously be aware of this. They need to take steps to ensure they are able to comply. The fact that once it's brought in place and it's ensure that it has to be 100% compliant, then I think you have to ensure that you are complying, right? So most of the traders are aware, most of the exporters are aware. they need to comply. And most of the government has also kind of ran programs. They brought in all these exporters on a single platform. They've done a lot of conferences. They've done a lot of talks as well, where the government has explained what a regulation is. Also understood from some of the businesses that already might be complying, understood from various tech companies as well. They've also involved a lot of institutions, educational institutions, research institutions who are able to understand this regulation better. So I think that is happening, and that's a good initiative that the government plus a lot of businesses are taking as well.
So let's talk about this. Say I am now an exporter. I'm like, okay, I will do traceability. I will adopt this system. I will somehow figure out and make sure that I can sell to EU. What are some key challenges you see them facing as they even implement this process, as they implement these steps?
So, like we discussed earlier, a lot of these things are built in silos, right? You don't have one person who maintains a complete supply chain. You have a farmer, a grower, then that is supplied to maybe an FPO or a curing unit, then you have a roasting unit, then you might have a trader somewhere in between who might be selling either roasted coffee or non-roasted coffee. So in that case, it's about the fact that you have so many players involved in the ecosystem. Now, if it's just sending the polygon, then I think it's still okay. But when it comes to traceability, then you have to ensure that you're able to bring in all the people on a single platform, convince that that they need to use the system so that we are able to provide end-to-end traceability to a consumer in anywhere in the world. I think that's where the major challenge. The challenge is getting all of them to work together to ensure that we're able to provide end-to-end traceability, because nobody controls complete supply chain of these commodities within India. You'll have a isolated grower, you'll have an isolated trader, etc. If it's a bigger chain who if they have their own farms, etc., that's a different ball game. But when you have these smaller traders, they procure from different farmers. So getting all of them together to work together, I think that's where the major challenge is. Secondly, being able to understand technology. Most of these people, have not been in touch with technology. They were probably farmers, growers, traders, right? So they are not. They may not have the tech knowledge that you expect an engineer or a developer to have. So when it comes to
even today, despite the tech adoption,
I mean, tech adoption. When people say tech adoption, it's mostly what smartphones. A lot of these things definitely have been adopted. Like I've seen a lot of people use drones, etc. But when it comes to understanding a system, that's a different ballgame. You need to understand the nitty-gritties of the system. What are the challenges in building a system as well, right? So to be able to build a system, you need to be able to think like an engineer or developer, right? And an architect of a software architect. So that's where the challenge is going to be as well. So the good thing is there are enough companies out there which are able to provide such systems. Then in that case, these people just need to understand which is the right system to use, integrate that, and adopt it, right? So I think one.
So in your opinion, cost is not a very big factor in this?
Cost is going to be a factor anywhere, because if you're now adding a new layer on top of what you're already doing, like if you're using technology, if you're using a new system, obviously cost comes into play. But I think the fact that the benefit of what this brings in is much more than the cost. One, you are now complying with the regulation, because non-compliance is quite expensive. So in India, of course, it's not that expensive, but outside, non-compliance is very expensive. I think
धंधा बंद हो जाएगा.
Yeah, more or less. You need to pay a good, I think 20-30% of your profits as fines if you don't comply, right? So that's a huge risk that all businesses they may not want to take. So when it comes to that, one is that you have your risk of compliance, you're reducing that. Secondly, you're also now able to provide a nice story to people who are importing it right now. Imagine a story, and people have always been fascinated by hearing a story about a farmer, how he or she has grown something, and how that particular commodity or coffee or rubber or soy is now in my hands. So that story of end to end, where I'm able to even visualize who the farmer is, also becomes a nice marketing ad. So we've seen, whenever a brand is able to provide traceability, is able to provide the story behind the product, it adds a lot more value. So it also means that now there is not just compliance that's happening, but also you're able to build a brand around it as well.
If anything, we have to learn building this story the way wine companies have done.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, wine companies also use traceability quite a lot these days. So,
Okay.
if you take a leaf out of the book, I think this is a nice story to add here. Hey, this coffee is coming from this particular farmer, and this is what it is. This is how it looks like. We can add all of that in the technology.
Right.
Plus, you add a little bit of blockchain, and blockchain ensures that complete trustability.
Wait, so you mentioned this word blockchain.
Correct.
So what role does blockchain play in building that traceability in supply chain?
So the idea about blockchain is to be able to provide data that is trustable, immutable, and then it's not centrally controlled by somebody, right? So when I have a supply chain which I can control, that I don't need a blockchain for that matter. I mean, a lot of times people just want to do technology for the sake of doing it. So a lot of people have just adopted blockchain for that matter, even though it was not needed. But in some cases, it is needed. Where again you have too many players who don't interact with each other, don't trust each other. So how do you bring them on a common platform where they're not worried about data, etc., and not worried about somebody else manipulating the data, somebody else trying to game the system? So wherever there's no trust is where you build a system on blockchain. When I say it doesn't depend on trust, basically builds trust, because now everybody has same access to the data. Everybody has same access to all that is happening on the network. So now when that happens, if there are people that don't know each other and people who may not have transacted with each other earlier, now able to do it easily. So in simple terms, blockchain is nothing but a decentralized database. It's where everybody holds a copy of the data. So if you change it, I have to change it as well in my system for that to reflect across the network, right? So everybody has to get that change that you made and approve that change. So only then the whole change gets reflected on the network. So nobody can tamper with the system. So that's the beauty of blockchain. So the idea of blockchain here is...
who would, according to you, end up implementing a blockchain in this?
So I think there has to be... So either the people who are involved in the network or the biggest player in the network would basically get it implemented. It could be government bodies like the boards, like coffee boards, silk boards.
You guys work with Coffee Board.
Yes.
We've actually done an episode on this, guys. You can check it out right here. We'll link it. But yeah, please continue.
So some of these boards are actually pushing it so that it gets done. The individual players may also want to do it if they have the wherewithal to do it. So it depends again. If it's a smaller player, they may get together and do it. Like I said, not all use cases require blockchain. EU has not. I don't think they have mandated blockchain as of now. They mandated traceability. They've done something similar for pharma as well, where I think pharma products had to have a traceability, anti-counterfeiting element on them. So I think which means that after pharma, you now have these 7-8 commodities.
Then it's going to go to something else.
There may be, obviously more regulations coming, especially if Europe is your market. Then I think we need to start ensuring that we're able to provide traceability from day one, we're able to provide anti-counterfeiting from day one, so that we're able to meet the compliant needs. Plus also show to those importers or the people who are actually buying your products that you really care about quality, you care about the environment, you care about their health as well.
So say I am a company. I'm an exporter and I want to, integrate the polygon mapping thing. I want to integrate traceability. I want to integrate blockchain. Typically, like, how does my implementation funnel look like? How do I start if I'm doing with Aquis or any other similar product?
Yeah, so right now, like I said, the mandate is to provide a polygon which they can verify that this is coming from an area which is not deforested. And polygon building can happen. There are a lot of tools available which you can use. There are a lot of GIS tools available as well. So you can basically go around the boundary of your farm or wherever you're growing your cultivating your products and get the polygon done. Or a lot of companies also which provide that service, right? So for polygon, there are enough GIS companies, GIS systems available, but we also provide that as an additional service on top of our track and trace system. So it starts with creating the polygon of wherever you are growing your coffee or whatever your produces, and then once that is done, the next step is what is brought in, which is a track and trace system. So then we have for a user, it's a simple mobile application, right? You don't need to worry about setting up complicated systems.
From the mobile app
dashboards.
itself, you're picking up the GPS and everything.
Absolutely. So you just need to download the app. You even through the same app, you can basically get your polygon defined. Same app is what you will then use to get the produce, digitize the system. You just need these labels that we provide, which will be used to digitize the system, and that's about it. And
Label, which is the digital twin, which you said.
Absolutely. And
that label becomes a physical indicator of the digital twin.
Correct. So it becomes a physical indicator. And that also we have variants. So we have non-clonable labels in that case, because a simple label can be copied, right? So we also come up with a technology which basically prevents even that label to be non-copied, so that we protect not just the data, but also the
authenticity.
Label itself, the authenticity also of the product.
Right. I guess the whole point is this, that, if you're thinking, one is from a compliance perspective, but also from an environment perspective, tech like this is what, when they say you have to protect the environment, tech like this is which actually does that.
Absolutely.
So that's quite interesting. It's
because now you don't just understand who are the people involved. Now you can also get to know more about them. You get to, maybe you can then find out more about the practices they follow, right? I mean, in olden days, we used to have child labor, for that matter, right? So you could also ensure that.
So that's another mandate which is coming, right?
Correct. Yeah.
This is, I guess this is part of them having more ethical workplaces and all
Absolutely.
of that. So the next thing they will clamp down is this.
To make sure that you have you follow the right practices, you don't follow
child labor,
unethical practices. I mean, good thing in India, I don't think child labor is present anymore,
right,
unless in maybe smaller pockets. But in the olden days, I was saying, you obviously wanted to ensure that you can prove that this is what you do. You want to have the right certificates, right quality certificates. You want to ensure that if you have a factory, you're following the right processes. And even if you might have an ISO certification, for that matter, right? So you can always attach these certificates as well as part of the track and trace network. So any product produced that gets in the hands of a consumer, they can understand not just the provenance, but also understand the various players, what are the practices they follow, are they compliant with local laws, what are the quality standards they have, do they have any quality certifications, etc. So it makes it much more valuable now. Because it gives you a single a platform for you to
so we talk about quality, we talk about ethics, we talk about transparency and authenticity, but what you're saying is, using tech, you make all of this tangible
and available easily,
right?
Because now it would have been available at various places. Now it's on a single platform where I can see this, I can understand what's happening, and I mean, that's the beauty of it.
So what are some future trends and developments you expect EUDR going into? What do you think they'll ask for next? What do you think, how much more complicated it will get, or what's happening? Where do you see this going?
I think besides the regulation, I think if you think of the greater good of the world, I think one, how do you arrest climate change? So around that, what are the sustainable practices? Companies may be asked to also talk about the carbon credits or the carbon emissions that happen because of the processes that they follow, right? So they may have to also have some kind of certification that they may want to show as part of their manufacturing process about the carbon emissions, for that matter, right? In addition to that, in terms of technology, for that matter, I think AI is going to play a very important role, mainly because
how does AI get integrated here?
So one, like I said...
by the way, for the audience, for me, AI is ChatGPT. So you'll have to tell me, how AI comes in here.
So AI, like you understand what ChatGPT is, right? It's basically an engine which is able to respond to you smartly, is able to think like a human, etc., right? So given that there's going to be so much data now as part of the system, we'll be able to understand where the various producers are coming from, and understand a lot of challenges around it, like to what are the various challenges that are present right now. So AI in this case would help us ensure that the large hordes of data that we're able to get now, we'll be able to smartly analyze that and be able to arrive at very good decision making capabilities in terms of how the particular product has to be routed, where it has to be routed, in terms of, let's say, if a produce goes stale and it goes bad within a few days, How do you ensure that doesn't happen? Coffee or some of these producers are not perishable. I mean, they are perishable, but at least they have some longer life, right? Shelf life.
But
So
some of the products are perishable.
are perishable. So in that case, how do you ensure that you follow the right system and the processes and the right supply chain, the network or the node to ensure that the items stay fresh when they are delivered to the end consumer. So I think
You get visibility on all of this.
visibility, data, and that smartness is going to basically enable a lot of these processes to get simpler, more efficient. I think that's where AI is going to play a lot of role. And of course, you also have decision making, which will happen, which will become easier and faster. And that's where, and I think AI is going to be an integral part of any technology now. It's like it's an element which
Just
will
that
get added,
intelligence layer is
Correct.
needed in. Okay.
which will get added to every industry, etc. Right. So in this industry is also something where AI will get added just to make it more intelligent, to smarter, and provide better results and more efficiency.
So guys, there you have it, a breakdown on the EUDR, which will affect a lot of exporters. Now, if you are an exporter, I have a small, if you are an exporter, I'd like Vikas to speak about Origin, which is a product which Aquis has built, which we've built to ensure that we are compliant with traceability norms across the globe. So Vikas, would you like to say some words about Origin?
So Origin is nothing but.
By the way, one small thing, I gave this name to him. So
You did.
he's not given me any credits for this name, but I gave it to him.
Okay, I'll give you. No. We came up with a name. You said you like it. That's
No.
Anyways,
But go ahead, please.
So origin is, as the word says, how do you understand the origins of something? So origin basically helps you understand the origin, the provenance of a particular product, and trace it through the system. So origin, in a nutshell, is a track and trace system which starts right from the time the product is manufactured or produced, maybe in a farm, all the way till it's consumed, right? So it helps you trace the product in the supply chain, ensures that at each point you're able to understand how the product is moving. In case there are returns, you'll be able to understand whether this product actually went out from this particular place, and also allow people to remove counterfeits, because now if I'm able to trace the product to the supply chain, I can reduce counterfeit products, illegal products coming in,
Yeah.
and prevent that as well. Plus, a very important aspect is pilferage, right? You see a lot of pilferage within the country. When I say pilferage, there are two types. One is, of course, a product which doesn't belong to this company, somehow ends up in the supply chain, or a particular product which is supposed to be sold in one region now gets sold in another region when it's not supposed to be sold. So you can also prevent that through a track and trace system like Origin.
Okay. So Origin is the product which Aquis has. One of the advantages with Origin is it enables you as an exporter to be compliant with EUDR, and EUDR as it stands today and whatever they have planned in the future. So we have capability from the polygon mapping as of now, all the way up till traceability, which they are planning to bring in the next few years. And I think a lot more features as well.
Yeah.
So you'll be compliant till like how in automobile, BS7, BS8, whatever is coming, right? If I'm not wrong.
Absolutely. I think, like I said, it's not going to stop at just polygons. They'll obviously want to ensure that they bring in additional regulations as well.
And increasing this commodity.
I was about to say that. So right now there are 7 commodities. I think soy, cocoa,
leather, rubber, coffee,
cattle, coffee, and I think there are a couple more which I'm not able to recollect now. And of the
we'll put up the list here, guys.
Yeah, and products derived from these 7 commodities, right? So I think the number of products the commodities can also increase. So given that, I think it's going to increase both horizontally and vertically as well.
Right.
So in terms of regulations, there may be more parameters that could get added, and we could have more products getting added as well.
So there you have it. If you have any questions related to EUDR or Origin, or how as an exporter you can stay compliant across the globe, let us know in the comment section below. We'll arrange a call with Vikas and any other. We have a lot of experts in this space with them as well. And if you want to implement Origin in your organization, book a free demo. Our link is in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. It's always fun to do these episodes, especially because of how it directly impacts not just your business, but our economy as a whole. So looking forward to hearing from you. See you all in our next video. Bye, guys.